Welcome to Golf Industry Guru and the Gig Podcast, where we interview the best and brightest golf and hospitality leaders on the planet. On today's episode, you will learn some proven real-world solutions that'll help you and your team solve some of your biggest golf business challenges. So stick around for some tips, tools, and training to get you, your people, and your business powered on. Here's your host, James Cronk.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am thrilled to have on the Golf Industry Guru podcast today a man that I can tell you has been an inspiration to me for many, many years. I met Hugh Culver at a conference in Kelowna for the Canadian Society of Club Managers. He was the keynote speaker. I was just a little breakout session. I had 6 people in my session, I think. He had 600. But Hugh was unbelievable. And after that, I followed up by taking some of his seminars and his courses and reading his books. And he's just a fascinating person. So Hugh Culver, welcome to Golf Industry Guru podcast.
Hey, James. Thanks for the invitation. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, you know, and Hugh, what I love about what we're going to talk about today is, and what you've helped me with over the years, either as every once in a while as a coach or a mentor, and back in the day when, as I said, I took some of your courses, reading your book, Give Me a Break, and your blogs on BlogWorks, and my goodness, you've spoken to over 1,000, 1,200 audiences, for goodness sakes. I love the part of your bio, and this is a whole session in itself about somehow giving the world's most expensive tours to the South Pole. I don't know how, I was a janitor in my 20s and you were taking people to the South Pole, for goodness sakes. What was that about?
Well, it's really my backstory, because I was brought up in a large family, and my oldest brother, Dan, took me under his wing and introduced me to the world of adventure. And in those days, of course, nobody was really doing it in a big way commercially. And so we started with a rafting company, and then that became a sailing company. And then after those companies got sold, I had the bug, and I joined up with some partners, and we started flying people to the South Pole. So for me, it was just this incredible graduation to a much bigger playing field where I got to buy airplanes and deal in millions of dollars. And it was, I think my favorite quote coming out of that whole experience, James, was it's a Winston Churchill quote. And it's something like, it goes something like, there's nothing more satisfying than being shot at and never hit. And that's how I sort of felt, was I was escaping dire circumstances like every day. But it also taught me a lot about getting stuff done, and how, when you're young, you're kind of invincible and you have unlimited energy. So today what I want to talk about is how to get stuff done, even though you maybe don't have the same energy you did when you were 30.
Well, and thank you, because I'm going to take those pointers, but we will have lots of people listening to this podcast, Hugh, on Golf Industry Guru of all ages, whether they're in their 20s and they're working in a back shop of a golf club or a restaurant or a kitchen, or they're a seasoned, general manager, and he or she are in the twilight of their careers. But, when I listened to you over the years and read your blogs and the books and the stories and heard you speak, I mean, there's no doubt about it. You get stuff done. So maybe share with us, what's the secret to getting stuff done, for goodness sakes? I mean, how do you get stuff done?
Well, I'm going to take you through five recommendations I've got, James. And the first one is maybe a little bit counterintuitive, because it starts with eliminate. And so it's all about, the first one is all about eliminate, delegate, and automate. So it's considering whether you should do it in the first place. And if not, maybe finding someone else that can do it even better than you. So I suffer from a disease where I think I'm the best person to do everything. And the problem with that disease is I end up getting mired in all the minutiae of things that don't really move the needle. So I really like this model. It's from Rory Vaden, who wrote Procrastinate on Purpose. And he says, before you start anything, decide if you need to eliminate, delegate, or automate. So eliminate is kind of obvious, right? It basically means, listen, the wheels aren't going to fall off if I ignore this. it's not going to kill my business if I don't return that email. If I get a double booking, I'm just going to have to apologize and get out of that first booking. And so eliminate is all about looking at things that you do in the day that just keep you busy, but don't actually produce an ROI. Secondly, delegate. Most managers under-delegate. And again, it's because of this disease, which is I'm the best person to do things. Or if they do delegate, they delegate sort of superficially, like lightly. And so I've had to learn that if I'm going to get any kind of results in my work life, I need to really delegate fully. And that means allow people to make mistakes. Just give them enough range so they can make mistakes. And then finally, and we're still in the first thing, is to automate. And a lot of people, particularly in their 50s and 60s, are afraid of technology. So great, find somebody that's not afraid of it. But the automation opportunities are enormous right now, and they can literally save you an hour a day.
That's fascinating. And Hugh, I mean, you're not actively, obviously, in the golf industry, but what resonates to me right away about even eliminating things. The golf industry is very weird in that it's a hobby, it's a sport. People play it. We have restaurants, we have golf courses, we have banquet halls, we have golf shops, we have retail, and lots of people don't look at it as a business. But it's it's a multi-billion-dollar business around the world in many different countries. And if you owned a corner store or an insurance store, you would eliminate the things that don't help you make profit, that don't help your business grow or whatever it might be. And our business is filled with historical tasks and things that we've done just because it was done 40 years ago that we still do today. And eliminating is a key to, I think, becoming more efficient, as you said there, delegating, automating, and eliminating the things that are not going to propel your golf business forward. That's there's a lot for us to take from that.
Yeah, I listened to a great interview yesterday with Drew Houston, who's the co-founder of Dropbox, which is now a $7 billion company. And it's only, I think Dropbox is only less than 10 years old, and it's worth $7 billion. And he now sits on the board of Facebook, et cetera. And he was describing how he started to add all sorts of products to Dropbox. They added something called Carousel, which was for your slides and photos, et cetera, an email. He had an email product, and then came to the realization that these things weren't really their core competency. These things, were going to put them in competition with a lot of other bigger companies. And he said, I had to do a complete turn of face, and I had to go back to my team and I say, those things that I was rah-rahing about 3 months ago, we're dropping all of them because corporate business is where we're going to go. So what it taught me was sometimes as a leader, you need to make these hard decisions. And despite what you said was great yesterday, you sometimes need to cut away these things that are not producing for you so your team can be more focused. But it really is the leader that has to make that decision.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. I'm excited. What's number 2?
Number 2 is standing meetings. So don't waste a lot of time in these meetings. Meetings are comfortable. We all go get a cup of coffee. We order in lunch. The reality is that a lot of meetings can be done in 15 minutes. And so what I think is more meetings, more frequently, but less length. And so is to get into this decision of, okay, is this an hour-long meeting or is this a 15-minute meeting? I worked with a client and we brought in 15-minute standing meetings, and it really transformed the whole communication within the team. So the leader was more available because these were happening every Monday. The team felt more included. And even though it wasn't in depth, it was a chance for everybody to do a check-in. And it's all about challenging the assumptions you've got around meetings.
Yeah, that's awesome. The hotel industry, I know for more than a decade or more, the Fairmonts, the Four Seasons of the world, those hotel chains that are world-class successful, one of their common practices is every morning, the management team, the supervisors for 5-10 minutes all get together at 9 a.m. or 8 a.m. or 10 a.m., whatever's working. And they have that daily update where they're just talking about what's going on what's going on today, what's closed, what's open, what issues happened last night, et cetera, et cetera. But everyone is in touch with that day. It's kind of like a huddle, the daily huddle. And then off you go to kind of, compete and take care of the day. And it takes great discipline to make it happen. And lots of people can't do it. It takes discipline to ensure that those meetings happen. But for those that start it, they say they'll never get rid of it.
Mm-hmm. The third one is all about clutter. And I want to start by telling a little story. When I took my family to Cuba about 4 years ago. Have you ever been there, James, to Cuba?
I have. I was there once. Yeah, you bet. 100%. Yeah.
It's a super interesting place, right? And I was in downtown Havana walking with my beautiful young daughter, Claire, and we came across I think it's Hotel Europa, where Hemingway used to hang out.
Yes.
Right? And we ended up having this amazing salsa dancing in the lobby. And I became fascinated with this idea that the most successful writers, many, many, many of them, go to a hotel to do their writing. So, for example, Ian Fleming wrote all 14 James Bond novels at a hotel in Jamaica. Arthur C. Clarke wrote the 2001 Space Odyssey at the Chelsea Hotel in New York. Agatha Christie wrote Murder on the Orient Express at a hotel in Istanbul. So on and on it goes, right? And what I think is remarkable about that is they've created these masterpieces that have stood the test of time, and they did it outside of their normal clutter. There's something about a hotel room which is, it's like we don't worry about the hotel room. It's not like you go into a spare bedroom or your home office or your office at the club and you see all of these distractions. Like, a hotel room is clean and uncluttered. And I think we need to find a way as leaders to unclutter our life, because it's not so much the fact that, there's these cables that are frayed, or I should put these, bank books away, or I've got these files I need to go through. It's the time and the mental energy it takes to think about that and then to come back again. It's no different than keeping your inbox open on your email. And then you scan it, you look at it, and you come back to what you think you were working on. And we have to recognize that when we start our day, we have this amount of willpower, right? And Roy Baumeister talked about this, and he says, everybody has 100% of willpower when we start the day, but every time we have to make a decision, it chews away at our willpower. Clutter chews away at our willpower, because clutter makes us think about stuff that we can't do anything about. And so my big thing is eliminate clutter. For example, at the end of every Friday, just spend 5 minutes, get everything off your desk, clean your car, like have places where you can go and actually get focused on one thing at a time.
I can't remember who's in one of your sessions or some Give Me a Break, which is such a fantastic book about managing your time, managing yourself. But, and I at one point, I want to ask you about, sand, boulders, and rocks, because that's the thing that I always remember about, moving things down the path. But I remember a lesson about, at the end of the day, making your to-do list for the next morning.
Right. And
being clear about not having stuff on there that's going to distract you from the important stuff and from, I guess, all those distractions. For me, when I open up my inbox and it's got, how do you deal with that kind of, the clutter that is not self-imposed, that's coming at you from emails and the phone ringing and people wanting you to do this and that? How do you deal with that kind of clutter that fills up your to-do list and your inbox and your task list?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it is, it's sort of, we're all sort of like these human vacuums. We attract all of these things that naturally end up on our plate. And I think there's also an opportunity to continually look at our systems that we rely on. So all of us have these systems, James, that are sort of invisible. So, for example, an obvious example is a drive-through restaurant. It's like 1,000 systems are all at play there. And it's no different than at a golf club, right? There's systems for how you sign in online. There's systems for how you're greeted. There's systems, et cetera, for you getting your equipment, your golf cart, whatever. But when it comes to managing your work and your energy, there's also systems at play, but most of us don't examine those systems. So, for example, if you're starting to notice that people are dropping notes on your desk, if you're starting to notice that you come back from a meeting, you have 3 files and then they sit there for a whole week. If you're starting to notice that your inbox is never empty. You need to address your systems. You don't need to work harder so much as fix your system. There's something wrong with your system. Maybe you should have some assistant that is helping you with your emails. Maybe you should sit down and write a few rules on your emails. Maybe you should have a new place where those files go out of sight, but you diarize them. And so, a simple example is when you come back from a meeting, where do you put all those notes? If you don't have a good system, it just becomes a pain because now they're sitting there on their desk, they're calling out to you to do something. So systems to me are an investment in your efficiency.
Well, and it gets back exactly to point number one, for goodness sakes, about eliminating and about delegating and automating. It's connected there 100%. And that can help. I know, as I said, in our business, we've got so many moving parts, so many things going along in running a club. You really have to, clutter is something that just increases and increases and increases. That's fascinating. I love the story, by the way, about the authors and the hotels. I think, I'm telling you right now, for your next blog and book, Hugh, you need to fly to Cuba. Once we can fly to Cuba, find a hotel room somewhere on the beach and do your writing. That's the excuse I'm going to use next time I have to write an article. Well,
it's pretty attractive. And I can see why people do that, because it allows us to single focus. And that brings me to the fourth and the fifth. So the fourth tip was around, and it builds off of this idea of getting rid of clutter, is you need to get into a routine of providing open space. And the way to provide open space so that you can focus is you need to stop hauling stuff around with you. Stop, years ago, James, I was giving a talk, and at the end of this speech, it was in Ottawa, I think, in Canada, and I went up to this woman that had helped organize the event to thank her. We started talking, and I asked her, what's her workload like? And she said, well, I'm a professor. I'm also running this conference. I also have my own clients. And she confessed that every night she took a guilt bag home. And I asked her, what's a guilt bag? I'd never heard of this before. And she says, well, that's that bag you bring home with all this work that you never get done, but you look at it and you feel guilty. And it was kind of funny and cute, but it's also a bit sad because that was her routine, right? So she had this guilt bag. And so that doesn't provide openness. What openness looks like is when you go on vacation and you've got that moment when you can finally relax. Openness is when you have cleaned your desk and you get to sit down and think about one thing. And openness doesn't happen when you have a full inbox and all you're trying to do is to keep up. So we as leaders need openness. We're being paid, we're being given responsibility to make big decisions and not to be making lots of little decisions that somebody else could be making. So number 4 is create openness.
And how do you, that guilt bag is a fantastic kind of, symbol. And how do you give yourself permission, do you think? Because that resonates with me about having the to-do list and, you've got your computer out there and there's work to be done and there's I could spend time with my boys or I can, go and get another 3 things done off my list. How do you give yourself that permission to give yourself that space to be creative or to not have that guilt bag hanging around? What do you think some of the tricks to that, or I guess some of the values to that?
If you're running a club and that club is 1 quarter away from bankruptcy, you're going to get focused, right?
Right.
If you're in charge of food and beverage and your head chef just quit, you're going to get focused. Mm-hmm. So we know how to get focused. Cal Newport, who's this brilliant writer, his book Deep Work is really worth reading. He says clarity about what matters provides clarity about what does not. So we need to take time as leaders and say, what really matters here? And when we get comfortable, it gets dangerous, because when we get comfortable and everything's kind of rolling along, that's when we get surprised because somebody quits or a competitor moves in with a better marketing strategy, or we lose some key, members. And so as leaders, I think we need to continually step back, whether that is you block off every Thursday afternoon Steve Jobs famously would go for walks with Larry Ellison from Oracle, right? And they would just have these deep conversations. There was no agenda. It wasn't a regular meeting. It was basically talking about what does the future look like. And you can't do that if you're spending your whole afternoon reading emails. You need to get away and have this open space where you just say, okay, what am I missing here? What would take this to the next level? I just got off a call before this interview with a colleague in the UK who's going to be helping us take my company, BlogWorks, to the next level. I can't do it on my own, James, because I can't see the trees for the forest, right? Or whatever that expression is. Like, all I see is forest. I can't see the trees, right? Yeah. So I think as leaders, we need to remind ourselves that comfortable is not what we're being paid for.
Oh, that's brilliant. And it reminds me of this wonderful general manager, Andy Johnson, in Sentosa in Asia. And I love his example. He goes for a walk with his superintendent at least once a week, at 5 a.m. in the morning, and they'll walk the golf course and they'll talk and that's quiet quality. I mean, that's just fantastic quality time of a superintendent and a general manager getting together, talking about the golf property when there's not everything else going. They're finding their open space to have a quality conversation about their facility, and they're not being distracted by golf carts and members and people waving at them and, staff demanding their time or their phone going off. It's a 5 a.m. sunrise walk. And I just love that example of finding that space for themselves.
It's brilliant, and who knows what's going to come out of that conversation, but those are the conversations that actually move you forward. Number 5 is built off of Cal Newport's work, which is this notion of blocking time. And so this is a concept I've been practicing for 2 years. It's a simple practice, actually, and it simply means imagine that your day is broken into hour appointments, and you have to decide what you're going to do in each hour appointment. So obviously, we have blocked this hour together, which is fantastic. After this hour, I have an hour before my next appointment. So what Newport would say is, great. Well, what you need to do now is you need to decide what you're going to do in that hour. That's very different than saying I have a to-do list, which is unprioritized, and I'm going to try and squeeze it in, because what will naturally happen then, because my hour isn't blocked, is I'll go to my email or my voicemail or whatever. And so the idea with block time is to have these chunks of focused time during your day. That's number one objective, where I can actually work on one thing at a time. So in the last 90 days, I've been working on a major initiative with a nonprofit that I'm heading up. And so I don't want that to be on the back burner. I need that to be on my agenda every day. So every morning I would decide, where is that chunk of time that I'm going to move that boulder, as you talked about. I'm moving that boulder forward. And so, and the idea here is, not only am I blocking time to work on something one at a time, I'm practicing keeping a promise. You see, because when I block that time, and as I get close to that block, the temptation will be there to go do some bunch of other stuff. Oh, I think I'll just go get myself a cup of coffee. I'll just check social media. Oh, I'm going to go and follow up with some people on LinkedIn. And then I blow it off. And so it's this whole idea of, okay, I know that discipline is going to be a key ingredient to my leadership success. And so now I get to practice that all through the day.
That's that's bang on. That was answering one of the questions I had written down in my notes about, how do people overcome procrastination and that kind of pushing things off, and, is the difference between, being a type A personality and being lazy and all that other kind of stuff. But, discipline, like you said, if it's scheduled out, it's like when we make an appointment to go to the doctor, we don't blow off going to the doctor. If we go to the dentist, we don't blow off going to the dentist. If we made an appointment to go to the gym, what's any different, right? It's like when you make an appointment and you schedule it in, why do we decide some we can blow off and others that we can't?
Right. That's really good. And the reason is because we don't give it the same value. So, for example, I won't miss the meeting with you, James, right? You're a friend, a colleague, but I've also committed to you. However, as you said, the next hour, I could blow it off because it's not a commitment to another person. But if I make it the same value, then I won't blow it off.
That's awesome.
Everybody works well with urgency. That's great. We all know that works really well. The day before vacation, you're more productive than 5 days before vacation.
Yes. Yeah.
The challenge is how to have that same sense of urgency so that you can actually be really effective during the day. And then maybe you create that time for that walk around the club with your superintendent, right? Maybe you create that opportunity because your day actually can have breaks in it. You can actually manufacture those in. And so in Newport's case, the guy's a fully tenured professor at a young age, having written 4 books, having submitted 18 papers, like in record time. And he says, I never work past 5 p.m.
Huh, wow.
He says, all my colleagues are here all day long. They're here into the evening, seeing students. That's not how I work. I have blocks of time. If the student wants to see me, they can see me in those blocks of time. And otherwise, I am unavailable.
Well, what I love about that, and what we just talked about there, Hugh, with this, whole organizing yourself and those 5 kind of best features is, I'm sure you have the same experience in the other industries that you coach in or you mentor in. I know in many of the conversations that I have with managers in the golf industry is I always ask them, like, how much time are you spending on you? Like where in your 5 or 6 days a week have you blocked off some time to just focus on moving yourself forward, moving your career forward, moving your relation, whatever it might be, right? You're moving your challenges forward like that. It requires work. It's just like if we have a financial statement to do, we get it done. But if we haven't clearly identified what we need to get ourselves to move forward, it doesn't get done. It's like you have to work on you just as much as you have to work on the business. Do you see that? I mean, obviously, it's how you get stuff done, right? That's the part of it.
No, it's absolutely true. And I think it's also really difficult because most of us get a much bigger reward by getting work done than getting us done. And so this is why marriages break up. This is why people drink too much. This is why people, don't stay as fit as they'd like to do. It's because they haven't made themselves the priority. Obviously, if they were giving advice to a friend, they would say it differently. Right? If they're giving advice to a friend, they go, oh my God, you got to drink less, get to the gym more often, and be nice to your wife. Right? But when it comes to them, that there's no reward there. And so I think it's look, it's always going to be a challenge. It's always going to be something that because of our desire to serve other people or to reach some objectives, we may put that ahead of ourselves. But it doesn't make any sense at all, right? It doesn't make any sense. And I don't think anybody who's listening to this wants to have a heart attack in their 60s because they worked their butt off for the last 30 years, right? Well, that's
no one remembers that.
Money, my kids went through college, but I'm lying on the hospital bed. Like, it's ridiculous, right? So
100%.
We just need to get smart and start really looking at the big picture. And that's where I think we need to have time to step back, walk around the club, walk around the course, think, be reflective. I really think that we need to read more. I think reading books by some really brilliant authors is it just opens our eyes to what's really important.
And so, Hugh, to kind of put a bow tie on this, here's what I take away from this, which I think our listeners will really grasp. And I once again, I love the book, Give Me a Break by Hugh Culver. There's so many great nuggets in there, so much wisdom in there. But today what I took was obviously the eliminate part and certainly delegate and automate, but eliminate is certainly something that I think we can all do. Eliminate the things that are not a priority. The standing meetings and that efficiency is so critical when we have so many people that are in our clubs and different departments having to work together. We talk about breaking down silos. What a great way to do that. Getting rid of clutter, finding that openness for yourself to get rid of the guilt bag, I think is fantastic. So what's the name? I apologize. The name of the author for you're talking about blocking time and about the book that you just read.
Cal Newport.
Awesome.
And the book is actually called Deep Work. And it's actually fascinating because his premise is that with all of the crazy distractions going on in our world, that we're losing the ability to focus. And so he says in the romantic era, the artist could sit down for 2 days at a time and work on a painting, and we have trouble with 15 seconds. And so deep work starts with blocking time and doing one thing at a time.
That's awesome. Hugh Culver, thank you so much for this fantastic 5 points of getting stuff done. Our listeners are going to totally benefit from it. And we're going to have another chat about staying fit. But thanks so much, Hugh, for your time today. It was fantastic.
My pleasure. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks for listening to the Gig Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode and mostly that you learned a few things that will help you improve your business. Join us next time as we continue to bring you the best and brightest golf and hospitality leaders on the planet. Thanks for listening.